Welcome everybody to our Look Zoom, our inaugural Look Zoom. Many of you have come to a lot of our events, our Look events, which can't wait to have another one in whenever the near future is. And we always love suggestions, so please write us and make any suggestions if you have any speakers you want to hear, or anybody, any ideas that you have for these Look Zooms, as well as for any stories. We're doing a lot of Look community stories. And that brings me to Hagar Chemali, who is our moderator today. Hagar is a news, a very well-known TV personality. She brings the news to the world, and she is about to launch a show called Oh My World. It is currently, it's about to start on YouTube on May 8th. So go on and subscribe to the channel. Again, it's Oh My World with Hagar Chemali, and Hagar is a dear friend, and you guys are going to love her. And she has moderated a lot of our Look events. So she and I actually know Tracy well, and we are thrilled to have Tracy with us. So Hagar will introduce Tracy, and I will send everybody info on how to get in touch with Tracy if you want to set up some private sessions. So take it away. I'm going to mute myself.
Thank you, Elaine. Thank you for the kind introduction and the shout out for my new project coming up. I'm so excited about it. The best part about it is that I do it from home, which was more a budget saving thing, but in the coronavirus quarantine land ended up being the best decision ever. So I hope to see you all there as well. I am so excited about this. I, as Elaine mentioned, have moderated a number of discussions for her. It's one of my favorite things to do. As you'll see, my favorite activity is to talk. I was especially excited about this event because I love Tracy Fox. I also moderated a panel discussion with her last year. She has since become a friend. And on top of it, we're talking about a topic that is so pertinent right now about navigating these stressful times and finding happiness. And so I'm not sure if you all saw, she had a great Q&A in the last Fairfield County Look email blast. I found it great. And so we will actually touch on a lot of the topics she talks about in that article and expand on them further. But before we dive into some questions, by the way, I'll ask her some questions and then we'll open it up to the floor for questions. But before, I want to give a bio on Tracy. There's a lot to go through. She has a very impressive resume. Tracy Fox is a best-selling author and NYU certified life coach. She is regarded as the top life coach in Connecticut. She helps individuals, couples, families achieve a happy self, a happy marriage, a happy life. So really all aspects that touch our lives. She works with men and women all over the world, both in person and on the phone. Especially now over the phone. And she's written 4 best-selling books. I myself have ordered one of them. I should probably get the rest of them. They are very well written, and she is, I can attest, a problem solver, which is the best thing you need. She just kind of cuts through, gets the solution you need, and is amazing. So she works with clients in 3 specific areas: personal coaching, where she strategizes with men and women who are unhappy, who are stuck, who don't know what to do about it. She focuses on marriage and family counseling, where she consults with couples to reclaim or maintain the joy of married life, and families to resolve breakdown or failure to launch. We will be doing a little teaser, is that there will be a Look Zoom in the future on marriage, which during quarantine land will be I am especially excited. And then she works at it to help achieve work-life balance and success. So I figured we might as well, we'll dive in, leading off of the article. If you haven't looked at it, no big deal. Go afterward. I highly recommend it. So Tracy, I wanted to start off with, how the current situation is obviously stressing everyone out. Jennifer, you mentioned that that it's like this, right? That there are days that are good and days that you want to kill people. I am exactly the same way. Those people are not limited to my husband and children. And so, how do we stress get the better of us, right? Like, so sometimes there are days I find my thoughts thinking like everything is fine. This is going to be okay. We'll just get through this. And then, we'll move on and whatever. And then there are days I let my thoughts race to, oh my God, what if I can't get clients? Am I going to have to find a job in this environment? What does that mean for my mortgage? I mean, and then I start going down this rabbit hole. So how do we, what is your best advice to make sure that we keep calm and that we don't let ourselves go down that rabbit hole?
Okay, well, thank you. Can everyone hear me? Just want to make sure that we've got good audio. Okay, great. First of all, thank you for that amazing introduction. That was great. And to answer your question, I did talk about it in the article, but I think the main thing is it all comes down to a decision, right? Because what separates us from sort of the animal kingdom is we get to decide how our day and our life is going to go separate from circumstance. And this is like the main thing I talk about. And I even start my book, Happy Self, with this, that life is a one-time offer and you have to use it well. And so we all have to go through this pandemic regardless. Here we are with our circumstance, but we do get to decide how we're going to go through it. And I don't think we give ourselves enough credit when it comes to making that decision. We let circumstance run the day, like, oh my gosh, this, what about the job? What about mom? What about money? What about it is? And instead we can simply decide, make the decision that I'm going to manage this. It is not going to manage me. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Excellent.
Yes. Yes. You also talk in your article about the importance of sleep. So do you mind giving us some of your best tips for getting rest and also why you place such importance on that?
Well, I would say two things. One is before we get to sleep, and I know a lot of you know this already, but exercise is key. And it's not key necessarily to just stay in shape, but it's key because when we exercise, we produce dopamine. Dopamine is a neurotransmitter that actually helps us with feelings of well-being and happiness. So we need to be moving our bodies. And even if you can't go out for a run, go up and down your stairs, walk around. Really, exercise is the key to having a happy mental state. And then in terms of sleep, we have to talk about two different things. One is falling asleep. Some people have problems with that. And then staying asleep is the other issue that people have problems with. So when it comes to falling asleep, again, studies prove that if you have a bedtime routine, it makes all the difference. So no electronics before bedtime, except if it's something like a podcast, a routine, like maybe taking a hot bath, having a quiet moment of relaxation. And a lot of people also use supplements, something like melatonin, warm milk. I know a lot of people are trying CBD oil now. That's a big thing. So that's the strategy for falling asleep. And then I don't know how many of you have issues with staying asleep, right? We wake up in the middle of the night and we start to worry about things. And I think one of the best things you can do is have a notepad by the bed. That way, when you're ruminating about all the things that could possibly go wrong, once you write them down, they're out of your head and they're no longer sort of controlling you. And then you say to yourself, I can deal with this in the morning. It's on a piece of paper. And then that really does help you go back to sleep. Is that making sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
I mean, I'm one of the worst at the nighttime digital use. It's like when I'm on the phone the most, and lately every night, and I've told Elaine this, I Google every night, Google Greenwich COVID and Greenwich Hospital COVID, which is the dumbest idea ever. And I know it's dumb, and yet, and then I can't stop. It leads me to other articles. And then as a pregnant woman, my mind starts racing with like, am I going to have childcare? How's the hospital going to be? And it's so dumb. You mentioned the morning and how, right, like you write something down and then you wake up in the morning and you can tackle the day. And in your article, you mentioned how we can start the day instead of just like rolling out of bed and rushing, that we can take a moment, or that we should take a moment for ourselves. So can you talk a little bit about how you envision that? And maybe if you can, also explain a little bit about the difference between mindfulness and meditation.
Okay, so the first thing I think is, yes, we all tend to jump out of bed and start the day. And especially now with kids in the house and things have got to get done. And some of us are, there's a lot going on now in the household. And so I think this is especially critical advice, which is do not do that. Really make a ritual in the morning where you take a moment for yourself. And whether that's before you get out of bed, saying a prayer or saying a mantra and just having a moment about how you want the day to go. And then I think once you're downstairs, if you can, grab a cup of coffee or tea, sit with yourself and a notebook and sort of prioritize how you want your day to go, setting the agenda and the priorities. And again, just focus on one or two things that you want to get done and feel really good about that, as opposed to what a lot of people do, which is to write the endless to-do list, and then they feel badly at the end of the day that they didn't get it all done. I think we should do the opposite, which is you have your to-do list, prioritize 2 or 3 things, and feel really great about getting that done and realize everything else will eventually get done. Now, in terms of meditation and mindfulness. So meditation is an actual practice that you set a time, you set aside time for. And there's really 3 types of meditation. There is, and I don't know how many have actually tried this, but there's where you focus on a thought, like a mantra, or I remember taking it at high school. Mine was I had to sit there and see them visit down the clouds. That's the second type of meditation. And then the third type of meditation is transcendental meditation. And that's actually where you transcend your own mind. So those are the 3 types, right? We'd all love to try, I see a lot of eyes opening up there. Love to transcend our own mind right now. That's actually something you have to learn and go to somebody for. I think it's a one-on-one practice. But every study proves that transcendental meditation is life-changing for people who ruminate on negative thinking. In the meantime, you can't get to that. There are a lot of sort of things you can download, apps. A lot of people use Headspace. They use Calm. And a lot of celebrities and famous people who have really busy schedules swear by those apps. And you can just download them on your phone, and they're guided meditations you can use throughout the day. And I know there was another part to that question.
No, we talked about why it's important to start the day like that.
Yeah.
How you would suggest doing it, and the differences between mindfulness and meditation, which I think.
Oh, and then let me just say about mindfulness too. Yes, I mean, I think again, there's so much going in the home now. It's hard to be mindful, but I think what you have to do is sort of set your mind and say, whatever I'm doing, whether I'm working with my child's homework right now, or whether I'm cooking dinner, or whether I'm doing another laundry, I want to be fully present on that, because stress really comes from, and all anxiety comes from, when you're not present, right? Anxiety is, I'm either thinking about the past and worrying about something I said or did or didn't go right, or I am worried about the future. And of course, right now, there's a lot to worry about. And so anytime we can just bring it back to the present moment, which is, I'm going to do the best job I can do with this load of laundry, or really sort of try to enjoy the kids' homework, you will find much more peace in the present moment. So that's what mindfulness is really all about.
May I jump in here?
Yes.
Hagar,
yes.
are we allowed to interact?
Sure. Yeah, we wait
Okay.
till the end. But if it's very critical to this specific topic, this is an informal group, so feel free to jump in.
Great, thank you. My name is B. Crumbine, and years ago we lived in Europe, and while we were living in London, I did transcendental meditation, and I did find it was very, very interesting and helpful. I'm not a weird, strange, meditative kind of person in that context, but I am very much enjoying mine through Headspace, and I would certainly recommend that. You obviously are aware of it. I find it's wonderful for getting back to sleep when you have been awakened at 2:30 or 3:30 in the morning. Mindfulness is just a very interesting way to push everything out and let your head just kind of float back into that space of going to sleep. So I would recommend it's an app, and it's called Headspace, done by someone who is very good at finding the peace and the quiet and the subdued sense of life going on.
Oh, that's
Thank
good
you.
to know. These, I'm taking personal notes myself, as you can probably tell, given by the speed at which I talk and how many things I throw. I am always thinking of everything. I am guilty of all the things you just mentioned, of the to-do list that is impossible to achieve on a daily basis, of running out of bed, of all of digital use at night. And I absolutely feel the effect. I did think of a next book for you, Tracy.
Okay, great.
Which is, unless you have this already, if you had a book that, you know, you could turn to every morning and you flip it to, like, every day is a different page, and you have like a quote that just sets you for the day, that gives you some kind of motivation. It could be your quote. It could be quotes that you've collected from different people. I would totally get that.
I'll jump right on that.
Yeah, it's like helpful, right? Mindfulness book or something for those of us who are not used to it. And B, I will totally download that app. I've heard of Headspace before, and Calm, I get tons of advertisements for it, and it always calms me for the 5 seconds I look at it. And then I move on to something scary like Iran. I got to work on that myself.
Well, it only takes 10 minutes. That's the good thing.
Yeah.
It only takes 10 minutes. And if you can find 10 minutes to just go away, your coming back will be much more pleasant.
Yeah, that's true. I need that, especially now. It also, you know, this question, Tracy, of mindfulness and how one gets ready in the morning also leads me I want to ask you about the question of being alone versus being in groups of people. And a lot of us now are also kind of, you know, you're in the house with groups of people. Some are not also. Some, it's the opposite for some. So can you talk a little bit about, you know, are there the exercises that you've already talked about, the steps to take in the morning, exercising outside, or even if it's up and down the stairs? Are there things that you recommend doing with people, or things that you really recommend having some alone time? You know, is there a balance, or is everybody's balance different? What are your comments on that?
My comments are that we really need to think about the difference between loneliness and being alone, right? Because sometimes we put them together. And so you want to make sure that you're not lonely. Someone said to me the other day, I was coaching, and I thought it was extremely profound. She said, now that everyone's home, the loneliest room in the house is the family room. And that sort of broke my heart, because what she was saying was that everybody had disappeared to their different rooms to either do homework, or her husband was working in the basement or whatever. And she felt incredibly lonely in her own house. And my advice back to her was to go to everyone, you know, rally the troops and say, we're all in this together. I am feeling lonely. And can we start playing Jeopardy together at night at 7:00? Or can we have breakfast together? Or can we meet for lunch or something? I do think you have to, you know, stand up for your own needs. And so we have to remember this is a really tough time for a lot of different reasons, but we really are not alone. We are together. And so you're going to have to advocate for yourself in terms of that. And if you're feeling that way, you have to get up the courage and reach out to somebody. And I will guarantee somebody's going to say, I feel exactly the same way. So happy you reached out to me, right? Because we're all in need of encouragement. And I think it does take courage to reach out sometimes, but that's what we need to do.
Mm-hmm. And it which kind of leads me to the question about boredom as well, right? I mean, how does boredom affect the human psyche, and how can we recognize that we are bored, even if you're busy? Sometimes I noticed myself, the days I have young kids, I'm homeschooling, I've got the house, you know, I have my work. And so sometimes I am busy. There are not enough hours in the day to finish everything, but I'm also, sometimes I kind of feel bored and it depresses me. My parents, I know, who also live in Greenwich, they feel more bored. And they've actually, as a result, been great at childcare, which has been very lucky for me. So how do we recognize, B knows my parents. They like now sometimes they won't bring them back, which is, I mean, it's been more productive, which is good. But so how can we recognize that we are in fact bored and prevent that or fight that?
Well, again, I mean, I agree with you. I mean, if you were bored, that is the kiss of death, whether you're in the middle of a pandemic or any time else in your life. And I think you have to think in terms of how can I make this time exciting? Every one of us needs something to look forward to. And I do think this is a good time, one, just in terms of strategy, to really have something to look forward to on the other side of this. And whether it's going on a family vacation or buying yourself something that you were waiting for or anything, having things to look forward to really is not only the antithesis to boredom, but it sort of makes, you know, your life purpose. Second of all, in general, I think it's a good idea to have family meetings. And I'm relating that to boredom is because if we all can sit down together and brainstorm together in a family unit, right? You'd be surprised at the suggestions that people can come up with. And I don't know how many of you are having family meetings, but I just think it's such a good thing in terms of getting on the stage, encouraging one another, setting structure for the house so that we don't kind of feel like one day is drifting into another. So structure, and definitely something to look forward to. And this is going to go into what other things we might be talking about, but I'm going to go back to purpose too, right? We have a chance to define what this time is really about. And I do think it would be helpful for each of us to kind of decide, want this out, because it can be about just getting through the day. And for many of us, we're so busy, that's what it's going to be about. But we can also say to ourselves, what do I really want this time to be about? Because it is time we never had before. So is it time to learn something new? Is it time to maybe work on my marriage? Is it time to learn, think about my career differently? Is it time to maybe even look at some of my own, faults that I want to walk into the future with differently? Does that make sense? Okay.
So everybody think of your questions, you can shout them out, or if you're timid, don't be timid, but if you are, you can always type them into the chat box, which is it should be at your lower tab if you scroll down to your computer. So you kind of have already answered this through a mix of things, but I'll ask it anyway. What are your best tips for staying positive during this time period without burying your head in the sand, right? Without saying like, okay, I'm not going to listen to the news at all, because I don't know if that helps either. So what are your best tips in that?
So I have a couple of them. One is, like I said at the beginning, you're going to have to go through this anyway. Like, here we are. There is no changing the circumstance. But what you can change, and this is age-old philosophy, is how you approach it and attack it and think about it. And it is the most powerful gift in the world that we get to decide, literally, what am I going to do with this time? I can be completely annoyed and screaming that all the kids are home. Or I can be like, I am so grateful all my kids are under one roof again. Like, two different things. Even with something tragic, when my father was really sick, and literally I went and lived with him and took care of him for a year. And I didn't approach that, even though it was really hard and it was tough and he was dying, I didn't approach that as a depressing time or a why do I have to give up my whole life to be here time. I really approached it as sacred time. Like, I'm going to think of this as sacred time. And I think we need to approach this particular time the same way. What is this time really about? What is it about in terms of how we're all treating each other? What is it about in terms of how we're treating the environment? I think there's a lot of grand lessons here. And if we can kind of rise to the occasion, it can really put purpose and meaning around this time, as opposed to, I'm just in survival mode and help me get to the other side.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That makes sense. It's like glass half full almost, right? Like I don't go down the rabbit hole often. Sometimes I'll start to think like, well, wait a minute. I didn't actually think about what happens if someone in my family gets coronavirus, or like the job thing, right? But then there are a lot of other times that I think to myself, if I didn't have all this time, I honestly don't know that I would have launched my show before I had this baby. Or I think about the time I have with my kids and all these activities I really never made time for that I found I enjoyed. Not all of them. Some. And things like that. Or like somebody randomly texted me the other day and it was a wrong text. It was for someone else. And I probably would have ignored that in the past. But in COVID land, I was like, no, what if they're trying to reach them? So, I was like, hey, if you want to reach, this is the wrong number. I hope you find this person and get to them or whatever. And they were so thankful. And that kind of, there's a positivity that comes.
Well, I will say about 3 weeks before COVID too, someone said to me, if you could have anything in the world, what would it be? And I said, if I could have anything in the world, it would be to have all my kids under one roof again, because they're all off and in college and everything. And voila, I got my through. You know what I mean? And same thing, I've been reworking on my career and thinking about new ways I can reach people. And so it really, the time is what you make it. And so I'm encouraging everybody in the group, regardless of what's going on, to make it something special or sacred or, you know, positive for somebody else, maybe being service to somebody else. But there's a lot of ways we can use this time so that when you look back on it, you're like, wow, I really did use my time well. And that's all we have, right?
Yes, exactly. All right, so we'll open up the floor. We have a first question from Fairfield County Look Production. So what is the most considerate way to talk about one's happiness and joy during stressful times like now? I feel guilty sharing my personal happiness when so many others are dealing with the deadly COVID-19 virus and harsh economic setbacks.
Well, again, it depends what group you're in and who you're speaking to. So, you know, we'll add that in. But I do think a couple of things. One, we always want to start any conversation with validating what other people are going through. And that's just a good relationship tip across the board. We don't often validate people. And so I do think that conversation can always start with, I understand, you know, everybody's going through a tough time, and I do understand what's happening. However, I have some good news to share, or this is what I've decided to do in the midst of this crisis. I think it's just a matter of really owning what's happening, but then being able to say, but, you know, is it okay if I share some good news? If you need to get permission, and or just going into that, because quite honestly, I think we could all use some good news. So, but we don't want to act like we don't care that anybody else is going through tough times. But I love to hear good news right now, because there doesn't seem to be that much of it. So I don't know if that answers the question or.
I think so. I think you're saying that, right, it may seem insensitive on the person who has joy to share, but it actually won't be received as that because people are looking for those tidbits of good news. I agree with you. I hang on to every small piece of good news.
And also, again, if you're sitting one-on-one, the asking permission helps, because once you get permission from somebody, then you're free to do it. So would it be okay if I shared some good news? Once somebody says yes, it's the same thing with if you want to, you know, give somebody something about improvement. You know, would you mind if I give you some advice is a lot better than unsolicited advice. If anybody's ever tried that, it doesn't work.
Are there some other questions? Felicity, I see your hand. You're on mute.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Tracy, thanks so much. That was very interesting. And I do believe in, you know, sharing good news, because I do think emotions are infectious. You know, if you're with good people, if you're with happy people, if you're hearing positive news, you get that feeling as well. So I completely agree with sharing good news or being around positive people. But my question is, you mentioned podcasts, and you said that there are some great podcasts around. And I know the universe of podcasts is huge. There are so many. Are there any that you think that would be great to listen to? Do you have like maybe one or two that are your favorites, or perhaps speakers that you just will automatically go to, and all of their podcasts are interesting or compelling?
Well, I mean, I can talk about one or two that I listen to, but the ones I listen to are always based on things that I'm interested in. So one of the ones I've gotten hooked on recently is because I watch Shark Tank every night with the kids, because I'm an entrepreneur at heart. So Barbara Corcoran just came out with one, and it's called Unusual Business. And to me, it's absolutely fascinating, because I'm always looking for ways to change up my business. And she talks about entrepreneurial skills and sales and things like that. So what I like about podcasts is they're so streamlined to your particular interest.
Right.
So that's the one that I mostly listen to right now. And I know there's a lot of ones on happiness and positivity.
Yes, that's what I'm talking about. One that's relating to this topic that you.
Well, yes. So the one that is, and I actually am taking the course just because I thought it was fun, and I write about it all the time, but I had never taken it. You may all know that all the Ivy League colleges are offering free classes now, and it's through Coursera. And one of the classes, and it's the #1 class ever taken at Yale, was on the science of happiness. And so that woman, the teacher, started a podcast called The Happiness Lab. And it's all about how to be happy and the science of happiness, and people are really loving it. But if any of you want to take an Ivy League course, if you have free time, if you're not running around with kids all day long and doing laundry, it's fun, because every top college is giving courses for free. online as well. So that's just another little tidbit as well. But the Happiness Lab is a new one that people are really loving.
Great.
Podcast.
Thanks so much, Sarah. Tracy, sorry.
Yeah, no worries.
That's amazing. I had no idea that there. I should look one up for launching a YouTube show.
Exactly.
Are there some more questions for
Send them
Tracy?
in.
I can tell you that we are very lucky to have her. Yes, Jennifer, you're on mute. Jennifer, you're on mute.
Yep. Okay. I have a question. So for years, I've been hearing practice gratitude, right? For years, Oprah has been talking about it. And I just never understood the why. Why is it so important to practice gratitude?
Love that question, right? Because we always take everything at face value. We never ask, well, why should I? We just go and agree. So, but yes, it goes back to what you focus on expands, right? Whatever you think about all day long is going to expand. And so gratitude, when you focus on what you're grateful for, then of course, that's what you're thinking about. And again, it goes back to what I even said about, kids being home. A lot of people don't feel grateful for that. They feel like this is a pain. It's getting in my way. It's taking up my day. That's one way to look at it. And a lot of other people are looking at it as, I am so happy everybody's home. And if I don't get as much work done or make as much money, it doesn't matter. So it's all about where you can find gratitude. And I do think when you start your day with gratitude or end your day with gratitude, it really just sets you up for either having an amazing positive day or getting a better sleep, because that's where your mind is going to go. Whatever you think about, everything else follows. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Are you going to start doing some gratitude now?
I'm going to start doing it in the morning and at night before I go to sleep.
There you go.
Yes.
Great. Great question.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions? If not, I'll throw another one that actually, Jennifer, you made me think of, because you mentioned gratitude, is one of the things that I am seeing during this time period is more forgiveness. And, Tracy, what do you think of that? Does forgiveness also lead to a kind of happiness? Is that, now is certainly a good time to reflect and think like, really, was me having this falling out with this friend really all that important? Maybe I should reach out to them. But, what do you think about that as well?
You're just, as you asked that, you're reminding me of a great quote by C.S. Lewis, which is, everyone thinks forgiveness is a lovely idea until they have someone to forgive. Mm-hmm. Like if we went out on the street and we asked everyone, what do you think about the idea of forgiveness? Everybody's like, that is the most important thing. I love the idea of forgiveness. And then the middle, when you're in a battle with somebody and you have to forgive them, you're not quite so sure it's a great idea. But no, actually, yes, of course, right? I mean, forgiveness is a great idea anyway, but especially now. And again, especially now, I keep saying to everyone, we're in the middle of a global pandemic. If you can't reach deep into your own soul and figure out how to start healing relationships, now, then, I think this is a time for putting a real mirror on yourself. And that's what I was talking about before. I think this is a really special time to really take a look deep and decide, who do I really want to be going into the next section of my life? And forgiveness is a wonderful place to start. And here's another thing that just came to me as we were talking. So I was talking to another client this week, and she is really struggling with perfection. And of course, it's very difficult. And that's a thing a lot of women struggle with. And my advice again to her was, why don't you use this time to do the opposite? Why don't you say to yourself, forget it. I'm actually going to do the opposite. I'm just going to work on not being a perfectionist and maybe failing at a few things and having a few laughs about it. So if I don't cook the lasagna perfectly, instead of being upset, maybe get out a glass of champagne and say, good for me. And so maybe this is a time to look at yourself and say, what is one thing I could really work on, whether it's forgiveness or perfection or the need to be right? What is something that is a challenge for me that I could just make a decision that I'm going to use this time to completely turn it around? Patience, ego. I mean, there's a lot of things we could work on. But back to forgiveness, I think it's the most important thing, because relationships, all are healed through forgiveness.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah. And I always, when I talk at the end of a talk, if I'm giving a talk and I'm on the subject of forgiveness, I always challenge everyone to think about, is there one person that you really need to forgive? And I don't care if there's 1,000 people in the audience, every single person raises their hand, which is pretty powerful. And so, and then of course I challenge everybody, are you willing to leave here tonight or today and forgive that person? And so maybe I'll throw that challenge out to everybody here. Is there somebody that you really need to forgive? And would this be the time that you're willing to do it?
That's a good question. I mean, I will share my story with you guys on that so that you all can get started on it. I also had a friend where I had a falling out last year and thought during COVID, and she's a health worker, suddenly I just started seeing things in a different light. So a few weeks ago, I texted her. I thought, like, this is silly. You know, in comparison, I want to forgive her. And so I texted her. Now, she didn't respond. So I will forgive the fact that she didn't respond. And I will text her. She's probably working, honestly, you know, horrible nursing shifts. So I will text her again in a few weeks. But I agree with you. I mean, that is what it came to my mind. I was like, this is just so silly in comparison to what we're dealing with now.
And there's also a great quote by Mother Teresa, who says it takes great humility to forgive. You can't have a lot of ego when you're going in to forgive, because then you get into, well, why am I forgiving this person? You know, they betrayed me or whatever it is. Once you start down that path, you're not going to be forgiving anybody. So the key to forgiveness is really humility.
Can I ask a question though about forgiveness though? Because I mean, the ability to forgive, but what about the ability to apologize and recognize that if you've done something wrong? I think a lot of people don't apologize. You can forgive, but in our society, most people are very type A and very, you know, narcissistic, but what about something like that? Should we all look to how we can apologize? Say, I'm sorry?
Well, I mean, again, I think if you have something that you've done wrong, it takes great humility to go and admit it, right? That's tough for everybody. Is that the question though, really? Are you asking, should everybody apologize? Or are you asking, should I forgive somebody who's not willing to say that they're
But
sorry?
do you ever find that some people that they in their own head, they don't think somebody did something wrong, they deserve an apology, but on the flip side, that person sees it completely different? How do we marry the two together where people can see right from wrong, and also, yes, be humble, have humility, and apologize if you feel, I don't know. I
think it's a great question. I think it's something everybody struggles with. And I always say the same thing, which is forget the microscope and get out the mirror. Because once we're into what everybody else is up to, and myself included, that's where we get into trouble. If we just get out the mirror and say, who do I want to be? Do I want to be forgiving? Do I want to be somebody who says I'm sorry when I'm wrong? Do I want to be humble? Do I want to be kind? If I just worry about that, I believe everything else does sort itself out. Not easy to do. You're completely right with A-type personalities, but again, I think it just goes, who do you want to be?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Did I answer your question?
You did. Yes, absolutely.
Perfect.
Any more questions to end of our event? Are there any other questions? I know Elaine mentioned in the group chat, this is a great chance for our kids to learn to get along with each other too. Mine, it's yes and no. I agree with you though, for sure. Any other questions that anybody want to jump in or chat? Put a question in the chat box.
Tracy, any thoughts on getting kids to get along? I mean, just
always
with younger kids.
Always. So I mentioned family meetings, and again, I am a big believer in family meetings, and most people don't have them, which is where you get everybody around a kitchen table. And what I'm saying is, if you want people to buy in, you have to get them to weigh in. And so I'm a big believer in, I don't care what age, everybody around the kitchen table, and one by one you say, then the question should be something like, how can we have a happier family? Or how can we all get along? Or how can we make sure the chores get done? And then we start with whoever it is, little Peter, who's 5 years old, and let him give a suggestion. And then to the next one, because once people give their thoughts and they help write rules, they're much more, and that makes everybody feel like, hey, it's a team effort. as opposed to mom and dad at the top sort of scolding everybody, saying, do this and get this done. That works, but it doesn't work for the long haul. What works for the long haul is getting kids to weigh in so they can buy in. Same thing with spouses, weigh in to buy in. Works every time.
Can I tag in on this question also, because I'm kids and devices and screen time. What, in your experience, what have you seen? Are kids that when you take away the phone and the more you take it away, that they're happier, that they find, I mean, I'm struggling personally with this in my household.
Agreed.
I don't like screen time. I mean, I'm looking at you guys right now, but I'd rather be looking at you in person. I love talking to people. I love being social. And I'm struggling as a family, as I don't know if they're going to be happy people in the future. They seem fine being quarantined. We're actually completely fine. Like this is my life in general. Like I have an 18-year-old son. He's totally fine looking at the screen all the time.
Absolutely. You are with everybody else, right? Call it the dreaded Xbox, and I mean it, but kids love it. It's a completely different way that they grew up than maybe we all grew up. But yes, time away is also important. And so again, I think sitting down and saying, look, I know you love your time on the screens, but we can't do it all day long. So let's negotiate what will work. Can we do, and again, they're going to say, well, I don't want to negotiate. I just want to play all day long. And you're going to have to say, well, that's not going to work. So let's negotiate. And then 4 hours on, 4 hours off, or, if you cut the lawn, then you can watch, Xbox, play Xbox, whatever it is. I think there's a negotiation there. And when you negotiate with kids, I feel like they're much more respectful in terms of following through because they've been in that negotiation. It's not just you telling them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Have you ever tried that?
We're working on it. We've done a lot of it lately. It's just because my kids can sit on a screen all day and it's okay. Like this quarantine hasn't affected them the way it has as me, an adult. I don't know. It's just different.
No, agreed. I've got 3 sons home and they all love it. So I'm with you 100%. But we know it's not good for them. Like as much as it might feel good to them, it's not good for them. It's not good for the brain. And so I think it's a matter of deciding, look, I know that, I want you to enjoy your screen time, but let's negotiate what's going to work because you just can't be on it all day long. So whether that's you get these things done and then you can get on screen time, or let's agree on 4 hours, a time frame. I think just putting in a structure is really going to help.
Right.
So I have a question. I have 3 daughters home from college and they're all doing online classes and my son is serving in the Navy. They're so busy and working so hard. They have to be on their screens all day. And when they do work out, they do run some, but I would love to be able to provide them with some joy. And I turn to food. And so far I'm working on low cal. I'm trying not to bake because they don't want me to bake, but does anybody have any ideas of other ways where I can bring them joy? I know that my attitude makes a huge difference, and I had a huge attitude change this week. Instead of being crabby about cleaning up, I've been more joyful, and I see a huge difference. But I would love for some ideas on how to make their days a little bit better.
Okay, so I'll throw some things out and then everybody can jump in. Again, my thought is, well, first of all, I want to congratulate you and also say to you, don't give yourself a hard time. I think I have easily gained 20 pounds in the last, because that's where the joy is. It's in the going to the kitchen and finding something else to eat because there's really not that much else going on. So I think we can all be kinder to ourselves around food, certainly. And I love the fact that you had an aha moment this week about finding joy in all things, whether it's cleaning up or whatever it is. And again, I think if you—
Not all things, but—
Well, okay. But you're starting down the path, so good for you. And in terms of joy, again, maybe sitting with the girls and saying, let's brainstorm. What would bring us joy? And if they just say, well, I don't know.
They're going to say a puppy.
Okay, well, I think every shelter in the United States has been cleared out because that's an idea a lot of people have. Is that something you'd be willing to do?
We already have one. And
we actually are getting a puppy.
Yay, Robin.
I know. The puppy's coming on June 8th.
Oh.
I know, I gave in to my kids. But anyway, I hope it's not going to be like too much of a chore for me, but we're
Well,
doing it.
Sweet.
So
yeah.
What kind of puppy?
it's going to be another little golden retriever.
Not a
Oh,
It's the same breeder that we had for Chipper. So he's in Pennsylvania. We're going down to pick him up the first week of June. And then June 8th, we can go back and get him. So hopefully he'll bring a lot of joy to my
no
children.
no doubt.
Into our whole household. I think Chipper's life's going to change for sure, right? Our 5-year-old golden, no idea what's coming.
I will say,
Puppy's a great idea. The only other thing that I've been doing in my house is, and again, my little rhyme is, families that play together stay together. And I'm a big believer in game. We watch Jeopardy at 7 right after dinner. We all sit down, and although none of us can answer any of the questions, we still have fun. You get a point for whatever. We play Trivial Pursuit. We play cards. Yeah. So maybe, I don't know if anybody in your family is a game player, but that's always brings lightness and joy to a household. So maybe some game playing is just one idea I have. Because we really are quarantined, so we got to come up with something that's around the house.
I will
Anybody
say,
else?
you have boys, right? You said you have all boys?
I have boys, yeah.
The
Oh,
other,
No, I have.
is it all girls?
Yeah, my oldest is a boy, but he's away, and I have 3. I have a 22-year-old and twin 19-year-olds.
Okay.
Girls.
I thought maybe sports. We've been really like attaching ourselves to 30 for 30 and watching all these like kind of uplifting sports. I don't know. I thought
They're
they were
very
all
athletic. Yeah.
Oh, my girls are watching it too. Literally, I'm obsessed with the Michael Jordan Last Dance. We've been watching 30 for 30, the NC State story.
Mm-hmm.
It's made me, I cry. It's so uplifting. I don't know.
Great
As
idea.
a family, we've been doing it together.
Great idea. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, exercise is key, I think, during the quarantine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, one of the things that helped this week was I started doing yoga every day.
Oh, that's good.
God bless Adrian. And that's centered, and I make a point to take that half hour every day.
Well, and Elaine told me, thought was a great way to see the silver lining to this situation, which is that it's better, thank God it's now, this quarantining. Imagine if it were January, February, where the days are really short and it's so cold that you don't want to go out. And so I know today is not a beautiful day, but every day that I can go outside, I find I relish it all the more.
I agree. The closer we get to summer, the better.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Exactly. All right. Well, I know that Tracy has to go. If there are no more questions, then are there any more questions first? I don't want to step on anyone's toes. It's been such a good conversation. Doesn't look like it. Okay. So before we go, I will say 2 things. First, we will be doing multiple look Zooms in general and with Tracy specifically on a range of topics. The next one will be marriage, yay, which will be a very fascinating one. Tracy, I bet you have questions.
Hold on.
For a while, so definitely get your drinks for that one.
Can we get our spouses too?
I know, right? We should. Group session. Or venting. Maybe it's better alone. Who knows? But you have a point of bringing the spouses. But the second thing, before we close, I do want, Tracy, do you want to go through the books you have? Just to put in a little plug for Tracy, from whom I have benefited. She has an art of, if you do have a session with her, of going right to the core of a problem and giving you real step-by-step solutions. She's amazing. So Tracy, do you want to talk a little bit, just like mention your books, and so that everyone knows that if they do want to order them on Amazon, my favorite thing, I totally look forward to shopping on Amazon. Please share them with the group so that they know.
That's kind of you, Hagar. Yeah, so I've written a couple books. I don't know. Can we see or not? Oh, yeah, great.
Yeah.
So I wrote The Having a Heart for God devotional. This is for anyone who's never read the Bible and wants to understand it. It's literally every day you get a piece of scripture and I explain where it is in the Bible and why it's relevant to your modern life. So it's kind of fun and inspiring if for anybody who wants to do that. I have Happy Work Life, and this is all about finding your purpose and passion, and lots of other advice about having a happy career and also a successful home life. I have Happy Self, which is my 3-step strategy to elevating your inner game. So if you're struggling with just getting up every day and feeling joy and feeling happy and letting circumstances rule the day, this book is the answer. And then my last book I did is a workbook, and it's for him and her. And it's marriage books, and it's fun. It's actually a good thing to do during quarantine if you're home with your spouse and you want to work on your marriage. It's questions and answers, and you kind of go through. It's a 10-step solution. He writes his answers, you write your answers, and you just compare notes. And it's a good way to brainstorm on how to really have a happy marriage. Because again, you can have a marriage that's full of suffering and pain, or you can have a marriage that's filled with joy and brainstorming, and you just have to work on it like all things. And of course, the books will save you a lot of money, so that's good too. And anybody wants to reach out to me about anything, Tracy at tracyfox.net. I'm always available. I love emails. I love inquiries, and I love coaching. So anytime anybody needs a coaching session, I think what sets me apart from a lot of other coaches is I really do get to the heart of the issue in the first session. Sometimes people will come and say, I've been in therapy my whole life, and one session with you, I'm done. So I'm proud of that, and it is kind of my calling card. So if anybody wants to reach about anything, I'm always available, and I appreciate this opportunity. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Tracy.
Thank you so much.